Hi, I'm Andrew, and today we're going to be going over the concept of virtualization. What is virtualization? Well, defined, it's a process that allows a computer to allocate hardware resources to a virtual environment, such as memory, processing power, and storage. Some terms that we need to know: host, that's going to be your physical computer. A hypervisor is a software component that manages virtual machines on a computer. So a virtual machine is also known as a guest machine. It's a virtualized environment that typically runs an operating system. This can be Mac, Windows, Linux. We have two types. We have type 1, which is a bare metal, and that is installed directly on the computer hardware. This has better performance, usually, commonly used for enterprise applications, and some examples include KVM and Hyper-V. Type 2 is hosted. That's software installed onto an operating system, and that's suitable for end-user computing because it's a lot simpler. And some examples are VirtualBox, VMware, and Cameo. For snapshots and checkpoints, that is going to be a file that captures the exact state that a VM is in, which can be reapplied at any moment. So simplified, let's break things down a little bit. Think of virtualization like Inception. It's a computer within a computer.
Just like Inception.
And typically, type 1 hypervisors tend to be more secure than type 2s because of the depth at which they run. Snapshots and checkpoints. These are moments in time that have been saved, which can be reapplied at any moment. It's like a time machine for your virtual computer.
Time machine.
VMs can be built up and torn down quickly regardless of the hypervisor. And typically, the more resources you have, the better the performance. So advantages of virtualization. Why would you want to use this? Well, you can run multiple operating systems simultaneously on the same computer without rebooting. You can create a perfect sandbox or testing environment for software development or malware analysis. You can capture the state of a computer and reapply it in a variety of ways, not only in a virtualized environment, but in the real world. It's a virtual environment, which means that it's going to be a lot more flexible than a physical computer. Okay, so now that we've talked about virtualization, let's go ahead and let's demonstrate exactly what virtualization is. So let's go ahead and install VirtualBox. We're going to open up our browser and we're going to go to google.com and we're going to type in Oracle VirtualBox. Here we see a link going to virtualbox.org. We're going to click on that and we have a big blue button in the middle of the page that says download VirtualBox 7.0. We have a Windows host, so we're going to click on Windows hosts and we're going to save our file. Once that's done downloading, you can go ahead and run it by double-clicking. Here we have the VM VirtualBox setup wizard. Click Next. This is going to be the location of VirtualBox. We're going to leave it as default. Click Next. Networking interfaces. This is telling you that it might disconnect you from the network, which is fine. Python libraries we're also going to install. Hit install, and we let this run for a little while. Leave Start Oracle VirtualBox checked, and finish.
Good job, wizard.
The last thing that we're going to want to do is install the VirtualBox extension pack, and this is so that we can encrypt our hard drives. So we're going to say OK to the download, and we're going to save. It is a VirtualBox file, so it'll work as long as you have VirtualBox installed. Go ahead and open that up, hit install. Scroll down to the bottom, make sure you read this at least once in your lifetime so you know what you're agreeing to. Hit I agree, accept the prompt, and wait for it to install. It should be pretty instantaneous, and we can see that we pretty much have a working environment. So the first thing that we need to do when we think about creating a virtual machine is what we're going to install on it. In this case, let's go ahead and make a Windows 10 virtual machine. So we're going to go to Google again, and we're going to type in Windows Media Creation Tool. Here we see a link that says Create Installation Media for Windows, and it takes us to a support.microsoft.com article. Click on Windows 10 link, and we have two buttons. We have Update Now and Download Now. We're going to click on Download Now and Save File, and we're going to save it to our Downloads folder. And once it's done downloading, we're going to open it up. Give it a few seconds, and once you get to the license terms screen, make sure that you read this once in your lifetime and accept. Here we see we have two options. We are not upgrading the PC, we are creating an installation media. This is going to be an ISO file for another PC. Here we can select our language, architecture, and edition. Our defaults are totally fine, but they have a lot of options, so go ahead and pick whatever is most comfortable to you. We can choose between a USB flash drive or a ISO file. We are not making a bootable USB, we are making an ISO file. So we're going to click on the ISO file, and we're going to save it in our ISOs folder. Give it a while to create the installation media. Remember that this is an operating system that we are generating.
Later that evening.
we see that we have a windows.iso file in our ISOs folder. So go ahead and click on Finish, and we're going to go double check to make sure that we have an ISO file in that folder. So if we open up our File Explorer and go over to System C, we can see that we have an ISOs folder, and in that ISOs folder we have a Windows ISO. We'll rename it to Windows 10, and we should be good to go. Now we're ready to install it onto a virtual machine. Go back to VirtualBox, click on New, and we're going to create a new virtual machine. Here we have a name. We're going to type Windows 10. Under Folder, we're going to note the location, that's where it's going to live. Under ISO Image, we are going to select Windows 10 from our ISOs folder. Check the Skip Unattended Installation box. Under Type, we're going to make sure it's Microsoft Windows, and version is Windows 10 64-bit. Unattended install is grayed out because we're not using that. Base memory, we're going to crank that puppy all the way up.
Nice. Let's crank it.
As long as you're in the green, you should be good to go. Same thing for the processors. Essentially, we want as fast as possible when we're installing the operating system. Once you're done with that, we go over to hard disk, and we see that we have a file location for the virtual disk image. Now, we are leaving pre-allocate full size deselected because we want the virtual machine to expand as time goes on, not allocating 50 gigabytes right now. Now we have our basic configuration set up. We're going to just do a few more things. Go over to your Windows 10 virtual machine, right click and go to Settings. Under Advanced, we're going to click on Share Clipboard and drag and drop and select Bidirectional. And this will allow us to copy and paste things into our virtual machine. Take note of the snapshot folder. That's where your snapshots are going to live. Disk encryption. So we're going to check this box and we're going to select AES 256. This is going to be the strongest encryption available and pretty hard to crack. Go ahead and put in a password and repeat to confirm. We'll go over to System, and here we have a boot order. We are going to deselect floppy and bring that all the way to the bottom. Now make sure optical is at the top and that it's checked. This is what it's going to use to read our ISO file. Under processor, we can leave it as is. Display for screen, remote display, and recording, we can leave them as the defaults. Under storage, we have two items. Under SATA, we see a Windows 10 ISO and a Windows 10 VDI. The Windows 10 ISO is the file that we created. The VDI is going to be the virtual disk image for the virtual machine. Under network, we have adapters. Make sure that only the first one is enabled and that attached to is set to NAT. Under serial ports, we're going to make sure that every single one of these is off. Under USB, we're going to select the latest version if it isn't already. Under shared folders and user interface, we're going to leave those as default. Now we see that we have an encrypted virtual machine.
Encrypted? Maybe.
This is the basic skeleton that you need for your virtual machine. So let's breathe some life into this guy.
Come to life. Breathe! Come on!
Let's go ahead and double click on Windows 10. Here we have to put in our password that will decrypt the virtual disk image. Otherwise, we would not be able to see anything readable on the screen. And once we get to this purple screen, we know that we have properly configured the VM to at least take the ISO. So here we have our language, our time and currency, and our keyboard or input method. We can leave those as default. Click on Install Now. Here you would put in your product key, but I don't have one, so I'm going to select I don't have a product key. Here we're going to select Windows 10 Pro since that's the version that we would like. Next. Accept the license terms. Select Next. We're going to hit Custom Install. Click on New and Apply and OK. And we're going to make sure that we have the partition to primary drive selected. So we're going to say Next. Okay, so we have the Windows installation going. Let it run for a while. When you get to this screen, you're going to hit Restart Now or just let it do it on its own. But eventually you should get to this screen right here. This is the region screen, a very important part of the installation. We're going to leave United States as is. We're going to use a US keyboard layout. We're going to skip a second keyboard layout. We're going to set this up for personal use. We're going to select Next. This is going to be an offline account. We're going to have a limited experience. We don't want to sign into anything quite yet. And we're going to put in a username. We're just going to say username. We're going to put in a password. We're going to set security question. And here we're just going to say not now. We don't want any access to browser data. Here are some privacy settings. These pretty much track you no matter what. So we're going to deselect every single one of these.
All of them.
Hit accept. We're going to skip the customized experience. Give it a few moments. We're not going to accept any help from Cortana. And once you get to this screen, you know that you have a working Windows 10 environment.
Finally!
We see that when we try to extend the window, it does not really conform the way we want it to. In order to fix that, we're going to go to Devices, Insert Guest Edition CD Image. And usually we get a pop-up saying that we have a disk that just popped in. We don't have that, but that's okay. We'll go to File Explorer, then this PC. You can see that it's sitting there on the Devices and Drives menu. Go ahead and double-click on that and select VBox Windows Editions AMD 64. Hit yes. We're going to select Next, Next, Install, and Finish at Reboot Now. We want the computer to reboot so that the changes take effect. So go ahead and give it a few minutes to do its thing. Once we get back to this screen, put in your password. Give it a second. We can see that it's not really working quite yet. I think it should be working now. There we go. We can see that I have a new background. I cleaned up the taskbar a little bit. The machine is still updating. Funny thing about updates, if you get to a point where it just goes on forever, try to restart it. We can see that now it's completing some updates that it didn't have before. So once it gets back to this screen, we can go back to the menu and update it one more time. And it should finish rather quickly if it was hanging for a while. Let's go ahead and take a snapshot. Now, a snapshot is going to be like a time machine for your virtual machine.
A time machine.
We're going to go ahead and prove this concept. So we'll make a text document on the desktop named message.txt. When we open it up, we'll type in a message, and we're going to say a message from the past. Tilde. So we have a message from the past that's saved on the desktop. So we'd like to save the state of this virtual machine. We want it to be exactly as is, and if anything were to happen to it, we want to be able to, revert back to this point in time. So we're going to take a snapshot by going up to Machine, and then take Snapshot, name your snapshot. You can put a description if you want to. We'll go ahead and skip that, click OK. And now VirtualBox is saving the state of the virtual machine. If we go over to the menu and we go to snapshots, we don't see it's quite there yet, but it is taking a snapshot. It will appear eventually, like so. And we see that we have a saved state of the virtual machine. Now, notice the play button next to snapshot test. This indicates that it is a hot snapshot or a live snapshot. That makes a really big difference when it comes to storage. We are taking up a larger amount of storage or space if we take a live snapshot. If you want to save space, go ahead and take a snapshot when the virtual machine is shut down. That will give you a much smaller file. But in our case, we want it to go back to this exact state when it's already booted up and ready to go. We're going to mess with this virtual machine as much as we possibly can. Let's go ahead and delete that text file. Let's create an explosion background and let's just mess with it. So we're going to shut down the virtual machine, and we see that it's powered off. Right click on the snapshot test and go to restore. We'll deselect create a snapshot of the current machine state, and we will have a virtual machine reverted back to the state that we captured. So we can see that the message.txt is still on the desktop. Yeah. And our background is still the same.
Back from the future.
Imagine if your computer was infected with malware, or you had a system crash, or you lose a whole bunch of data. You can apply a snapshot and restore your work. You can restore whatever state that you saved. So that's about it for virtualization. It's a very powerful concept, and you can use it for a variety of things. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye.